Okay, welcome back to Esther Alexis, Body of an Extrovert. I hope that y'all have been grand. First and foremost, before I even introduce our guest tonight, I just want to take the time to really thank everyone who's really been listening and tuning in and giving me their feedback or just reaching out in some way or another to support. It means so much because this is a really new venture for me, not talking because I'm always talking. But just to know that there are people that are listening, there are people that are sharing, there are people that are just commenting, and again, giving that genuine feedback, it means the world. And it's just awesome. So hopefully we continue to grow from here. I hope that it is enlightening y'all, starting up a conversation, and broadening your I guess perspective about new things and topics or things maybe that you've already known, but maybe avenues you haven't thought about. Okay, so tonight's guest is my very own brother. It's very funny that this happened. So originally, I don't think anyone actually plans to put their siblings on their podcast. I think that's weird, particularly siblings that are very talkative and argumentative. Would you agree, Alex?
I would wholeheartedly agree.
I think out of all of my siblings, I argue with my younger brother the most. So he's legitimately the last person I thought I would ever ask on God's green earth to talk on the podcast. However, he had this recent experience that he's going to kind of summarize for us, and essentially we're going to be talking about integrity and the cost of our character, essentially. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to let Alex introduce himself. Go ahead, tell us who you are, what you're doing, school, and all the good stuff.
All right, well, I am Alex Charles. As you may know, I am her younger brother. And I currently go to school at University of Bridgeport for biology. I plan on joining the medical field soon, hopefully. And integrity is definitely a big thing with me. So I'm happy to be here.
All right, awesome. Okay, so can you tell everyone what your recent experience was? Very lightly. He's looking at me really funny right now. I say this because we're both very talkative. If he went into the full summary of his moment, we would all be here until Christmas. But give us a very brief synopsis of what recently woke you up into integrity.
Brief is quite the word. I'm sorry to say, but it wasn't more of a wake up. It was more of a readjustment, more of a readjustment of the definition of truth for me. So I was really surprised by it. I always consider myself very truthful. I try my best to tell the truth whenever I can. I'm not gonna say I don't lie. Sometimes a lie will come out here and there.
Just here and there?
Truly just here and there. I really try my best never to lie.
Oof.
And something that was very surprising to me was, so I had a dream, and I was like, okay, this is different. This dream had put up the question whether or not I lie or not. And I was like, okay, this is very weird. I've never had something question whether I like to lie. I thought I was very truthful. So I was confused, and I started looking for answers. I started looking within myself what's going on. So I ended up using the Bible. I ended up calling upon God, and I was asking for him to allow me to use his spirit so I could find out what kind of message this dream had for me. And throughout the day, I just kept getting this one message over and over again, and it was truth, truth, truth. And I was like, what does it mean? Of course, I feel as though sometimes something could be right in front of your face, but you still don't get it. So I feel like it took me a while to get it, and it took me listening to this sermon. It was called "Why Am I Anxious?" I was very, very happy to think about maybe just watching this, because I was like, all right, this could just, this is two birds in one, I'm like, okay, well, if I listen to this, knock out anxious off the table. At the same time, I could also figure out new things. But when I was listening to this, he was talking about different points. And I thought these points were really good. So I stopped it and grabbed a notebook, took a pen out, started writing everything down. I was like, this is great. And while I'm going through it, he is just talking about stuff like indecision, imbalance, how you have to at least figure out what you want to prioritize inside your life. And I'm like, okay, this is good stuff. But then he talked about something and I missed it. I was shocked. I said, why would I miss something now? I'm like, that makes no sense. So I went back and I rewatched it again, just so I could at least get it. And it said something about integrity. So I was like, why would I have mentally blocked out this integrity spot? And when he brought up integrity, he said, okay, this has to do with truth. And I opened up my ears immediately. I was like, okay, if they weren't open now, I mean, they are. So what I said was, okay, let's see what's going on. And he talked about, although you may not be lying, in a sense where it's like vocal, you're not speaking lies, you're not telling people lies, you could still be living a lie. And I was like, okay, what does he mean?
I'm just gonna snap you up. That's my little applause. Continue.
All right. So I was like, okay, I want to know a little bit more about this. And he goes into detail and he says, okay, do you ever have that instance where you see someone on the street that you know, or see someone outside of your comfort zone and they're like, wow, I didn't know that about you. Something like, for me, it'd be something like, okay, whoa, I didn't know you go to church, or whoa, oh, you work in this kind of office. They shouldn't really see that. They shouldn't really have that kind of view of you. They shouldn't have that aspect of you inside their mind. Where they see you in work, where they see you maybe in school, maybe just going to church, they shouldn't see different aspects of yourself. They should be able to at least recognize you in each and every aspect.
In every environment, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was kind of surprised by that. So I continued to listen, and I was like, okay, this sounds a little weird because I still consider myself pretty truthful. So I was like, can this thing go into further detail? And of course it did. And it was like, okay, how about giving this example? They're like, maybe you go to a function and there are kids at this function. And when you're in the presence of kids, you're not cursing. You're not being too overly obtuse. You're not saying too many things that could have innuendo meanings or anything like that. But then you will do it inside a place where you feel as though that's accepted. Why do you feel the need that you have to be different inside those different environments? Why can't you just be that single person? And I was like, okay, that's pretty accurate. What else? And it was talking about, okay, well, why can you leave somewhere that you're usually comfortable and do something completely kind to a complete stranger, but then maybe your own sibling, maybe your own family member will ask you for the same thing, and you have great difficulty at least accomplishing the task without being overly exhausted, or at least complaining a lot. But when someone else asks you for it, you could do it at the drop of a dime. So the more I started to listen to this, the more I started to realize that, yes, although I do like to tell the truth, integrity is still something that is something I should probably value, something I should probably look at again.
So then I guess my particular question to just really start off the conversation is, what is now your definition of integrity?
My definition of integrity is trying to remain yourself in all aspects of your life.
And how do you feel that propels you forward in the different environments that encompass your life, which means in your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life, if you will?
Actually, I think they all come in hand. Like, they all come in, how should I say it? They all are actually interlinked. When I say interlinked, I mean stuff like what you would probably not want to bring up in a very professional environment, you probably shouldn't bring up, period. Like, okay, me personally, I love to use the just the idea of maybe you're talking about kids, and you're like, when you're talking to a kid, you try to talk in a way where they understand. You talk in a way where you're not offending them. Talk in a way where you could at least be on the same level, but at the same time not give them something that they could learn from you that will affect them into the future. You're not going to cuss in front of them because you feel as though that's not something that they need for their life. You're not going to show them over-aggressiveness because you feel as though that over-aggressiveness is not something that you need for the economy. At the same time, you feel like it's not going to help them progress into the future. So if you're doing this now and you feel as though that you are locking up their future or you're messing them up by doing this and you're doing it yourself, what does that say about you? Aren't you messing up your own future? Aren't you going down a bad path yourself if you think that it's going down a bad path for these kids. So I just started picking apart stuff that I would usually probably try to stop doing in front of other people. Like, if I saw a kid and I was all like, okay, I want to be kinder, or I want to be a little more of a role model. Why can't I do the same thing for someone who is of my same age? Someone
and in
who,
the same workplace,
exactly,
same experience in life, and so on and so forth. That is understandable. But then, and here's my thing when it comes to integrity and people, I suppose I have the idea or the belief that we are not one-dimensional creatures. You know what I mean? And I say this because just as I am an HR professional, I'm not just an HR professional. I can also be a podcaster. I can also be a singer. I can also be these variety of things. And so that being said, I bring kind of different aspects of myself to the forefront in one environment and not necessarily to the other environment. So in this newfound belief or principle of integrity that you're living by, it makes me wonder, are you under the impression that you have to be one-dimensional the entire time? Because I think that it's not always, I don't know, appropriate, or is that a societal belief? You know what I mean? Those are like the questions that I still find myself imposing on that. And it's something that I think that a lot of people struggle with, because it's very easy to say, I'm the same person everywhere I go. But you do have to kind of customize yourself. Like, you can still be authentic to yourself while presenting yourself differently. And I'm going to use the Bible only because you were mentioning earlier how you were saying that you use the Bible to kind of like come to your new principle. And I really forget what verse it is. I'm really bad with recalling verses. But there's one where it says, you know, like, and to the Jews I became like a Jew, so that they may, or like, I'm really messing that one up. But it's essentially saying, yeah, to the Jews I became like a Jew, to the Gentiles I became like a Gentile, so one under the law I became as one under the law. Not necessarily saying that Christ himself was switching personas, but in order to be in the environment that he was in, adapt, if you will, because that really is the human mindset, is adapting, you know, in order to survive. We kind of, you know, do so in order to be the best that we can be in that particular environment. And so my question to you, and I'm sorry, I know I was like babbling there for a while. My question is, do you think that you have to be one-dimensional?
It's not one-dimensional that I'm trying to talk about. I'm trying to say that there's always some kind of underlying persona that actually comes through whenever you're speaking to somebody. People usually take it away as in like, oh, that person tends to be very kind, or if we were looking at the other spectrum, oh, that person's very selfish, or that person's very narcissistic, stuff like that. I'm not trying to say, okay, well, you should definitely go into these different places and think to yourself, all right, well, although I usually always bring this aspect out the most whenever I'm around them, now that I want to be very, how should I say, true to myself, I'm going to stop that. It's more of, I'm going to continue to show them this part where I am usually happy around them. I'm usually giddy around them. But at the same time, I'm not going to try to hide a part of myself that I feel as though they wouldn't accept. They still felt at ease to come to me because they're like, we know that you aren't going to try to attack us, or at least run after us, or make us feel as though that we're not accepted. And that made me feel better. I was like, okay, I feel as though my personality has come through. They've realized that, okay, I'm not the type of person to push you away. I'm the type of person to listen and then try to understand and then reach out.
You know, I really like that you said that your personality also came through in this moment of integrity for you. I say that because I'm someone who also listens to a variety of podcasts. And a little while ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it actually said something about the personality and integrity in the soul, because, you know, I love those things. And the quote was actually saying that once you align your personality, no, it was actually saying that you had to align. Okay, yeah, let me just make sure I'm saying this right. It was saying that aligning your personality to the soul is where one kind of meets their most authentic self. And that's because the two of those things have to have the same intentions. I think that's very profound. And so let me explain what that is, like in my mind, how I, interpreted it. I think a lot of the times, for example, I'm very extroverted. I talk a lot. I think sometimes people can see that as maybe aggressive or domineering, but no, like I'm just really enthusiastic and passionate usually about what I have to say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm unenthusiastic about what you have to say. You know what I mean? I'm just bursting at the seams to say what I have to say. I'm not going to cut you off, but I'm like, I'm ready to go whenever you're good. Like, you know what I mean? However, I feel as though my soul lives in quietness. Like I love I call it my inner sanctuary or my inner oasis, where I can kind of just be silent in my mind and in myself and kind of take those moments to appreciate myself, to evaluate my weaknesses and my strengths and such. However, I realized a while back, and I think that this was actually in a moment for me that was really dark, that the intentions of my personality and the intentions of my soul did not intertwine. As in, the extrovert in me kind of wanted to do all this like wildish, outlandish things to live my best life, to like be awesome. Whereas my soul was like, I want to do things that fuel my inside and not my external desire to live, but I want to live internally, like, you know what I mean, intrinsically. Like I want to be motivated by what's going on the inside, and I don't want to just do all these die-hard things on the outside and call that life, because that's kind of like the shell, and my inside was like, I need more than just the shell to be complete. Like we need to fill the shell with something. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. I mean, there was a little bit of rambling on with it, but
Thanks.
Where the soul and personality intertwine, where you say that they have to have at least the same intention.
And I think that is where you kind of like, those are the crossroad in which you can meet your most genuine self. And I think that because if this is how I perceive it, when trying to assimilate your character, because I think that we all think that we're complete, and that is detrimental, I think, to our growth as human beings. I think that the soul is constantly in a state of both discovery and recovery. Like we're constantly learning, we're constantly falling and getting back up, and things along those lines. So whenever we think that we're done growing, that we as a person are rounded out or are stuck in the ways that we are in, we kind of limit ourselves to others, to possibilities, to growth. And by limiting ourselves, we're almost like killing ourselves. You know what I mean? We don't allow ourselves to fully bask in like our optimum glow, if you will.
That's the thing. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. Sometimes my soul and my personality do not have the same intention. And when that happens, I am in complete and total confusion.
You're exactly like and you're disrupted.
Yeah,
like there's chaos. And
like,
because there's chaos, I feel like, and I'm someone who cannot live in chaos. I have come to this conclusion myself. And that's what kind of led me to be so very interested in your, integrity pact, because I was like, it takes a lot to have integrity. But does integrity also apply to having the intentions of the soul, to having those intentions of the personality? Is that something that you've taken into account, or is it something that you're still working out?
That's something that I am definitely still working out. When I say I'm definitely still working out, I mean, it's a lot of turbulence. I know that for sure. I know that it's always hard to align your personality with your soul. When you want to do one thing, and your personality is demanding another. And you can't always keep track of both of them. But there are those instances where you are able to get them to align. And when you do, it's an amazing thing. Like, okay. An example of me trying to get my soul and my personality to have the same intention would be find something where they both intertwine, where they both crossroads. And for me, that was the story I just brought up recently, where I had an experience where I felt as though my integrity was put up for question. And when that happened, I have a personality that I need to get to the bottom of things sometimes. I automatically need to understand what's going on. And if I can't understand what's going on, I'm just upset. I can't rest till I do. At the same time, my soul is always kind of working towards all right, so we can find a way to become stable. We can find a way to manage our lives better. All we have to do is sit down, pick up what we know can definitely help us, which I find is the Bible, and just slowly let it work on me. So I brought the two together, and it definitely worked out for me. I felt as though that moment, I knew for a fact that my soul and my personality was intertwined. I was very happy they had the same intention. But it's not always inside dire moments where it'll come into play. Like for me, I know I can feel that synergy whenever I am doing something that I love, which is photography. When I am doing photography, the reason I love photography so much is it kind of it became a deeper meaning for me, where I was once I didn't always have glasses. For some of the listeners out there who are listening right now, I wear glasses. And the thing is, I never thought I actually needed them before I got them. For me, it was something that you had to see to believe. So I was told, okay, maybe your vision is not that well. And I'm like, I can see. I can do the things that everyone else can do. I could take the test and still pass it. I could do all these stuff, and I could still read the board, although it's very blurry. It's blurry for everyone else too. And they took me to the eye doctor. I got these new sets of glasses. And the thing is, after you go to the eye doctor, they do this thing where you can't really see for a while.
They dilate your eyes.
They dilate your eyes. And everything is too bright. You can't really open your eyes for anything. And you're like, You're like,
sabotage.
I've been sabotaged, yes. They've taken away my vision.
And then they tell you, do this test and tell us if you can see. And you're looking at the guy like.
So I was quite upset. I was quite upset. I couldn't see anything for a while. And then when it finally died down, I was told try to put on my glasses. And I put on my glasses and I looked around, and I have to tell you, I saw a completely new world. I was quite upset. I said, what am I looking at? I looked around and everything was different. And the worst part about it is everything had a glow to it. I was like, whoa, I can't believe this. I looked around, I saw a tree. And I said, wow, look at that tree. I've never seen a tree like it. Regular old tree. I was like, I've never seen a tree like this. Look how it glistens. I looked on the ground and I said, I've never seen pavement like this. Is this a sidewalk? And then this is sad. Don't laugh now, don't laugh. I literally saw dog feces on the side of the road, and I said, wow, even that? Look at the details. That's different. And I told myself, that is crazy. And for me, that opened up a completely new perspective. That changed my horizons. And I told myself, okay, I've been living my life inside this one perspective my whole entire life. And then when I put on these glasses, I saw a completely different one that other people were seeing. And that's when I realized, I know it doesn't stop there. I know for many other, or how should I say it, for other people, this same thing could be happening. They don't see things from each other's perspective. And I felt as though that was something that I couldn't leave alone, like let alone anymore, or leave alone anymore. Because I was like, okay, if I could open my eyes to this new perspective and realize that things that I never saw or thought were beautiful are beautiful, then what are other people missing? So I started looking around more and more, and then I started realizing that it's not just vision that's different from another person's. It's also the way they interpret their life, the way they interpret an experience, the way they interpret a color. So I was very surprised, and I realized the best way I could probably try to interpret my view, or at least the view of other people, if I were able to see it, was through photography. So I picked up a camera, and the first thing I would do is I would try to abandon my own perspective and try to understand the perspective of people around me. I remember I definitely did that when I first left the country and I went to Haiti. And when I went to Haiti, I had met many family members that I had almost nothing in common with, but I decided to rather focus on myself. Rather, I would try to spend more time with them and see what they see and see if they think it's beautiful. Although maybe I wouldn't have thought it was beautiful prior, I wanted to know if this is what they think is beautiful. I talked to them more and more, and I realized, okay, we see different things, but at the same time, what they see as beautiful is still beautiful. So I took pictures. I took multiple pictures. And then I took pictures from my perspective. I took pictures from my cousin's perspective. I took pictures from my grandmother's perspective. I went all around as much as I could. And I looked back at these photos and I could see these different perspectives inside the photo. They were being portrayed differently. And I was like, this is amazing. So once I figured that out, I realized, okay, this is something I truly love. And that's when I realized as well that my personality had fell in love with this one habit or this one hobby that I could constantly do. At the same time, I felt as though my soul was lifted every single time I did it. As soon as I was able to at least talk to someone, maybe try to understand their story, maybe they have something that they've been through into the past, something that is still always haunting them, or something that has been uplifting them since they were maybe 3. Why can't I at least try to share that perspective with other people who can't see it? So I feel as though when you do get your soul and your personality to have the same intention, it's a beautiful thing. But I have to say that I'm also in turbulence. I don't always have that view. I'm not always able to maintain that view.
Here's a question. Because you're saying that you were looking through everyone else's perspective, and at time you would kind of put your own, abandon your own. I actually really like that you said that, but I was like, I thought he was gonna like rebuff it, so I was like, let me not.
No. But, it was definitely.
So, do you think though that was damaging to you? Like, because I feel as though a lot of the times, particularly when it comes to the topic of integrity and how that contributes to our character, we kind of, again, adapt to the environment that we're in. We try to see the beauty or see life through someone else's lens. And as beautiful as it is, if it's not our perspective, if we abandon our own, abandon our integrity, our truth, where does that leave us and our soul?
That's definitely true, and that's definitely something I have had to deal with. I had dived into this very, very, how should I say it? Very enthusiastically. Yes, thank you. And when I had done so, I had ended up inside a place where I just started to forget who I was as a person, what my goals were, what I wanted to do. And it started to confuse me a lot. I was very upset about it. I couldn't understand what was the main point of all of this. Why was I doing this so much? And I started reading different quotes and reading things that had to do with it. And I was just trying to understand, like, okay, has this happened to other people? And I had read that it had happened to a man who had played the Joker. He was a very famous actor.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, the guy that died.
Yes, the guy who died, but...
Is it like, I want to say something I'm not gonna attempt to get this. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Well, he played the Joker, but the way he had played the Joker was he had gotten into the role. He had really gotten into the role. He started doing stuff like he would laugh like the Joker whenever someone would tell a joke, or whenever something would happen, he would cynically find it funny immediately. He would always try to assume the personality of it, and at the same time, he would, instead of trying to see it through his own perspective, he would think to himself, I am the Joker. What would the Joker do next? If I was the Joker, how would I respond to this thing? And in that same sense, the more he did it, the more he felt as though he was losing himself, because he wasn't really paying attention to who he was originally. So that sent him into a spiral. So I was like, okay. I started reading up more on it, and I was like, okay, so this has happened to a lot of people. But the thing is, you also have to spend time with yourself. You also have to try to find a placeholder, maybe something like an anchor where you're able to track yourself back. So for me, I was able to do that once I had decided to try to at least get some kind of semblance of independence. And I felt as though I needed that independence so I could at least try to, how should I say it, get a more stable view of on my own perspective. So I was like, okay, I've always been creative. I haven't always used that creativity wisely, but I've always been creative, and very adaptable. So I decided to start a candy business. I was like, okay, what can I do? I know that the place that I go to is a high school, and I know that usually in high school we're always limited to what we eat and what we can actually have access to. And the thing is, something we definitely never really have access to, but we would actually like, is candy. And although it sounds a little childish, we do really want it. So I was like, okay. So now I know that there is going to be a demand for this. All I need to do is get the supply. And I had asked my father for some money, and I had gone out, got this candy, and I just started building on it. And the more I built on it, the stronger the business became. And eventually I had enough money where I could feel as though I was independent. I was buying my own things. I was handling my own things for a while. And I remember I even bought my own phone, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, I'm so happy. But in that independence, I was able to at least, how should I say it, spend some time away from everyone else. I was able to focus on what I wanted to do, and at that time, it was just try to make money so I could at least feel as though I don't always need to rely on something or someone or just people around me to feel as though my life is going okay.
You know, like, and this might be a leap from you, because I kind of cling on to these tidbits, but I feel as though a lot of the time, when we look for independence, when we are looking to really grow on our own, which is something that I feel as though you never really stop doing in life, there's kind of this need, there's a human need for the external acknowledgement, that we're always seeking kind of external approval, if you will, whether it's by our friends and family, whether it's by the societal standards. And I'm saying that in air quotes because really, what are those? You know what I mean? But I've come to realize, particularly when it comes to transparency, that if you learn that you're enough for yourself, it'll actually allow you to run your own race, and like, you're not really afraid of running into someone else's lane, or you're not in fear of losing the race to someone else. Do you know what I mean? You're not in competition with anyone. And I feel as though that's kind of the freedom that integrity allows you to possess. It's just one of the many freedoms, if you ask me. Do you know what I mean? I know that for myself, integrity was more than just speaking my truth, but it was becoming my truth. Do you know what I mean? And I feel as though, in particular, maybe it was just the way I've done it, I did have to make sacrifices to be at the level of integrity and transparency that I wanted to be, because I feel as though not everyone is as understanding, or maybe even if they are understanding, not everyone is necessarily good for the level of integrity or transparency that I'm trying to reach in my life. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel as though, particularly when you are really trying to get to know yourself and be yourself, you cannot be around people who are determined to not face themselves, who are determined to not grow. And I feel as though if you have the level of integrity that you want with yourself, you kind of have to say, I have to sacrifice relationships that are detrimental to me. I have to sacrifice those human projects, because I feel as though, particularly as women, we're told that we have the need to kind of rehabilitate like boys into men if they're not already them. Do you know what I mean? And I feel as though we cling on to these human projects and whatnot because we feel as though our level of transparency is enough for someone else. And that's just not the case. Like, not everyone is going to grow at our pace. But I feel as though when you set yourself free, when you say, this is who I am, this is who I'm striving to be, you let go of kind of that negative energy and those who are kind of feeding off of that energy, and you attract those who are also growing in their lanes, and you'd be surprised how they will inspire you to grow, even if you guys are not growing in the same direction. Do you know what I mean? So that was something that I thought was interesting. But here's a question that I have, and I feel like a lot of people have, in regards to integrity, in regards to knowing your character. I personally was wondering what obstacles you may or may not face that you feel like as a young black man that you are facing when it comes to your integrity that maybe other people are not. I feel like a lot of the times we forget to ask, as a young black man, how does that pertain to me? Because it doesn't look different for anyone. And it's not to exclude anyone who may or may not be listening, but what does it mean for you as a young white man or a young white woman? Or, like, do you know what I mean? Because there are different obstacles that we face. But for you, what does the obstacles facing your integrity look like that you feel like other young black men are going through?
For me, I definitely know that I remember integrity and truth have become such a strong thing for me was because I was black, and I felt kind of how should I say, handicapped because of it. And not that I was ashamed of my race, it was just more of, okay, because I'm black, now I have this sort of, I have this sort of
point to prove,
but not just a point to prove. It was more of just, I have to try harder than most people. I have to at least try my best to at least beat the stereotype that these people have already assumed of me. And when I say that, I mean, I know growing up, this happened a lot. It didn't really matter what I said sometimes. I would talk to a teacher, or I'd be accused of something by a teacher, not a student, because students didn't usually have to actually accuse you. It'd be a lot more of, okay, well, something's gone wrong. Who could have possibly done it? And I'd be inside a classroom or maybe a place where I'd be more of the minority and I was black, and they'd be like, was this you? And regardless if I said yes or no, it would still be pinned on me. And that was surprising to me. I thought that was very different. I didn't understand why. And I was like, okay. I'm all like, all right, so this is kind of weird. So then I kind of made it a point where I felt as though I needed to prove something to everyone. I needed to prove that, hey, although I am an African American, although I am a boy who maybe has a lot more energy than most, I still am not trying to do any wrong. I'm trying my best to do the best that I can.
So do you feel as though you always had to be consistent? Like you always were under a watchful eye?
No, oh yeah, no, definitely. I definitely felt as though I had to be very consistent. I felt as though I could not have a lie catch up to me. If I made a lie, I had to admit to this lie, or at least I had to follow through, because I felt as though that if I were ever to be placed inside a situation where I have done something wrong, it would just enforce whatever they have already assumed of me, whatever they already believe that I'm going to do or what I'm capable of.
So what do you think, what did you do, in your everyday life to kind of reinforce your integrity in order, like what like measures of consistency did you take? And what advice would you kind of give to others in order to like kind of, defend your integrity? Because unfortunately, you shouldn't have to, but that's just the world that we live in.
I made it a point to be very much an extrovert. When I say very much an extrovert, not an extrovert to catch a lot of attention or at least always make my point known or always try to have my way. The way I was an extrovert was I always made it known what I was doing. I always made it known that this is where I am, this is the situation that I'm currently in, and this is how I'm going to proceed with it.
You wanted no confusion.
I wanted no confusion whatsoever. I would always find a way so that the attention would be drawn to me somewhat, so that they would at least know what I'm doing. If something were to go wrong, or if something were to go missing, or if anything was to happen, they would already know where I was, what was happening, and they would know that I am not
the culprit.
The culprit whatsoever. Exactly.
You know, it's actually funny, like the way that you're phrasing it. I feel as though, but do you feel like that contributed to better habits?
Here and there, yes. Definitely. I got very good at manners. I was a lot more mature than a few of the people around me, which surprised me. And I was a lot more, how should I say, calm, collect in public scenarios. But at the same time, I felt as though it was a little challenging, because I felt as though I had to be an adult inside a room full of children, even though I was a child myself. And I felt as though I had to be a lot more watchful, I had to be a lot more careful. Whereas other people can make mistakes. If I were to make a mistake, it wouldn't end in a slap on the wrist. It'd end in a, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to send you home. You come back in a few more days once you've learned your lesson. And that was just tragic. I was just surprised. So I was like, okay. All right. So now I see how things are working. So I'm going to try my best to make it work in a way where I could at least manage to persist.
And so do you think that those are moments that also contributed to this new principle of integrity for you? Or were those aspects wherein you felt like you had to put on a mask, and now you're like, okay, this is my moment of integrity, this is who I am, no matter what?
I definitely know in the beginning, for me, it was very detrimental. I mean, I had a lot of anger for it. I had a lot of fury. I always felt angry that I always had to hide behind a mask while everyone else could just be themselves. And I don't know, I blamed the whole entire world for it. I was like, why does the world have to be this way? Why do I have to feel as though I can't be myself without some kind of repercussions?
Without coming under scrutiny, yeah.
Exactly. And it definitely weighed on me, but while I was trying to make sure that this mask was like keeping myself well hidden, I was still being very truthful. I was still trying to reach out. I was still trying to make sure that I was being, my intentions were being well known to everyone around me. But at the same time, I don't know why I felt as though I started to, how should I say it? I started to play a role in just affecting the people around me. I felt as though I was a role model. And that was kind of different for me. It helped me to start, how should I say it, socializing. It helped me to become a lot more friendly with people, understand people on a different level. And then I guess that helped to build, or at least add to who I am now.
You know, I asked that because, and you know, I love Oprah. I will never get tired of saying that. I hope that y'all are prepared to hear that for every podcast. And again, I am listening to her book, which is A Path Made Clear. And I don't get paid for advertisements, y'all, but I do love me some Oprah Winfrey. But she had a guest on her show when the show was still going on, by the name of David Brooks. And he said something that I felt was both, there was a duality to it. And he was essentially saying that decision making, there's essentially a part of every person that every time you make a decision, it either elevates or degrades the commitments that you make to yourself, i.e. what you would call your core values. And I was wondering, because I know I'm not a young black man, but I am a young black woman, and I do feel as though in the same way you're scrutinized, other minority children are also scrutinized. You know what I mean? We kind of have to walk a line that is expected of us in order to kind of defeat the pre-existing notions of us that we did not, create for ourselves.
Definitely.
However, I feel as though learning to walk that line has been both a curse and a blessing, because now I know how to do that, but how to also be myself. And I understand when it comes to the rage and things, but I feel like particularly when we discuss the cost of our character, how much it costs us to get to where we are, to put on those masks and, make it this far and then eventually take it off and be like, I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be myself. I think integrity plays a crucial role in that, in understanding not only who we are, but understanding where we are and understanding how being who we are 24/7 is actually breaking or blazing trails for children or people coming up behind us that look like us. And so I don't know. I always think, yes, these decisions led to, habits and actions and, and indicated who we would become. But I don't think that, let me be clear, I think that with integrity, you free yourself to become the best version of yourself, even if other people do not understand it.
No, definitely. Like where I said it was detrimental at first. Later down the line, I found myself, instead of making it more of a mask or hiding behind a mask, it wasn't more of hiding behind a mask anymore. It was more of just, even without people around me, even behind closed doors where no one else could see, I was still very well mannered. I couldn't help but be as kind as I possibly could be.
Because those habits.
So instead of it being something where it was something that I had to show people, it became something that I simply was. Yeah, I simply was. It became a part of me. And instead of being angry about it, or at least having some kind of rage for it, it was more of just, I had an appreciation of the fact that I was able to be able to, how should I say it, have this just kindness about me, have this willingness to help others, rather than just think to myself, all right, well, does this help myself? It was more of just, okay, I see this person maybe in peril, maybe they need some help, maybe they just need some quick assistance. Why can't I possibly help them? Why do I have to wait for someone else to be like, oh, it's okay, I'll do the job? Why can't I do it myself?
So essentially, it's integrity, honestly, if you're doing it properly, integrity is not only a gift for yourself, but it's a gift for others, because I feel like people see that in you, and they not only gravitate towards you, but that you see people who want to be or want to have that integrity. And you kind of reach out and go, hey, you can do it. Like, you can, be yourself.
Definitely, but it's also a challenge. When I say it's also a challenge, I mean, not everyone always has the right intentions. Not everyone is always going to be so understanding, as you said earlier. Not everyone wants the best for you. So sometimes you'll come across someone who realizes that you are trying to be very understanding, you are trying to be very kind. And they'll take that as, okay, well, if I really tried to, I could take advantage of this. I could maybe make them do whatever I want. Maybe I could at least get something out of this. And that's what I feel as though maybe the listeners should probably watch out for. You shouldn't try to distance yourself from that person. You shouldn't try to cut them off completely, but at the same time, you should definitely set boundaries. You should let them know, this is not something I'm okay with. This is not something that I really, I think the word for it now is vibe with.
But it's protecting yourself.
Yeah, but be very clear about it.
Because I think that when you have integrity, people can see it. But you also have to be willing to protect it, because I really do believe that there is an inner peace that you have when you learn to truly be with yourself, to grow with yourself, to appreciate yourself. And that takes, again, a certain level of integrity, and you have to learn to kind of protect your little inner sanctuary, your inner peace. And I guess that is, again, the sacrifice that you have to make, is knowing to set those boundaries and knowing how to do so. That being said, thank you so much for, coming in and talking about your experience with integrity. I think that, I hope that people listening are able to, take away something from it. And that's really it. Do you have anything to say?
Honestly, I felt as though I said as much as I could, but if I did have anything to say, it would probably be that I don't know. If you feel as though you want to be very truthful or at least very honest with yourself, just try to look within. And definitely thank you for listening and taking your time to listen to this. What is it?
It's a podcast.
I'm sorry. I was going to call it a cast pod. I'm sorry. English is not my favorite subject.
Oh, God. Whatever. No, but I definitely think that it's something worth having. I think that it's something worth growing to. And I think that it's a conversation that one can definitely expound upon. That being said, thank you, Alex, for joining the show. I hope that y'all were able to gain something from this conversation. And that being said, that wraps up our third episode of Esther Alexis, Body of an Extrovert. Have a good night, everyone.